Okay, here is our update on precious metals. It is September 8th, about 11 p.m. So it is, basically almost a full week of trading, and we have what appears to be a new daily cycle. We'll zoom in on the daily chart. We'll start with gold. So this is day 6. So far, the high has been on day 7. I suspect we'll get above that. That's, what is that? The high at 1728. We're down here at 1719 ish. At the same time, this definitely doesn't look that amazing, right? Like, this looks like a bear flag, right? Like, look at this little thing that got snuffed out, right? And at day 6, there's already been a lot of time. Like, it's already burned a lot of time. So that's not great. And you could argue, you could quibble and say, oh, no, 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 this is your daily cycle low. Like, oh, okay, sure. So now it's day 2. That's fine. They could, but this is a little troubling. Doesn't look great. On the weekly, so it missed making a new low by a whisker, right? So the low here was 1688.91. The low here was 1681, right? So about $8. So held a higher low. That's good. Inside week so far, week 7. Again, this was a week 31 low. So, but there's no reason. I always say this: the numbers are not mystical. There's no reason why we couldn't actually have. This would be week like 47. So wait, let's see: 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. Yeah, so week 38. So it would be a low on week 37. That's possible, right? The point is, so far, just an inside week. And if we look at the monthly, definitely setting up a potential bullish outside month, right? If you wanted to get sort of salivatingly bullish, right? Like, oh man, what's like one of the best case scenarios? Well, we complete this pattern, is it, right? This would be a false breakdown, right? So we broke down below the low of this candle, and now we're reversing all the way back up potentially. I'm not saying that's what's happening. That's a scenario that could happen. Especially, and if you're bullish, that's what you're going to kind of glom onto. And let's see, did we make a new low on the yearly chart? So 1676. No, we missed it by just a little bit. So a slightly higher low. So that's the gold chart. And also, I'll say on the monthly, keep in mind this is month 81. I keep calling this out. The 7 or 8 year cycle. We have to ask ourselves, when is the low for that long-term cycle, right? The previous long-term cycle bottomed on month 86. The one before that, month 92. Before that, month 96. That's going back 20 plus years. The one before that, 97. That's going back to 1993. The one before that, 102 months. That's going back to 1985. The point is, these things bottom when they bottom. And so you're either saying that we've already bottomed in the long-term cycle, or that low is still ahead. And if it is, it probably means we're still descending into the low. Because the alternative would be something like this, right? Like, so we've done this kind of thing. So you're saying we're going to do this, and then we're going to do something like that? Like, or I guess you're saying, like, if you're salivatingly bullish, you're like, we'll do something like that. And somehow that'll be our 8 year cycle low, which doesn't really make much sense. But it could happen. It certainly could happen if we get a really bullish turn of events. I mean, ultimately, this whole huge run up here during that war period was unexpected, to be sure. And so that's an example where the tide can just turn and all of a sudden you get sort of buy pressure. And if we turn to silver, that's what's giving you some real clues here. It's now starting to outperform gold. So that's on the bullish side of things. This is your monthly chart. I mean, look how it's already almost filling up that space. And so it's looking like silver actually has a better chance of making a bullish outside month than gold does. That would be a high above about just almost $21. Now that's a lot. There's a lot of overhead supply to get through to do that. But notice this is your weekly chart. Did you notice gold was just kind of like crawling along the basement? This thing is actually on an upward trajectory, and I'll start to like actually look at percentage change because I think that's helpful. So we've already rallied about 7% for silver, whereas gold, let's see, and again that's what you would expect, right? Obviously, gold tends to move a lot less. Yeah, so 2.2% for gold. And so if we look at the weekly chart on silver, wow, we are like basically like wow, a hair's breadth away from making a new weekly high. These are important signals, right? Yet at the same time, right, we made a new low on the weekly chart last week. So here this is where it gets important, like the nuance, right? And this is why this is about price action and not cycles. It's in that order, right? It's about price action first, cycles second, not the other way around. So we either had our weekly cycle low on week 24, which and then we had a rally for 5 weeks, and now we're descending into another weekly cycle low. That's absolutely what it seemed like for sure, and still seems like. And I'll tell you what you would need to happen for that not to be the case, right? Right. So that's one scenario, right, where this is week 5 and this is still week 8, and so we still have several weeks of downside. The other scenario is that this is actually week 31, right? So this is week 24, week 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, right? And so again, one scenario is this is already a failed weekly cycle because we went below the low of this previous weekly cycle after topping on week 5, which is what you would expect. If you top on week 5, you are expecting a failed weekly cycle. It's highly unlikely you're just going to crawl along the bottom for 10, 12, 15 weeks. Now, if this is actually the new your weekly cycle low here on week 31, then this is actually week 1. And by the looks of it, we're about to make a new weekly high, right? Above this high right here, which would further confirm that would make this a swing low and tell you, okay, whether or not this is a new weekly cycle low or just a failed weekly cycle low off of this, you do have a weekly cycle low, or excuse me, you do have a weekly swing low. So that's a bullish pattern no matter what, and that's good enough to trade off of, especially as it potentially has implications to create that bullish outside monthly candle. On the yearly chart, just be aware, we're still way below last year's low, which to me means that may actually serve as something of a magnet, right? So last year's low is 2143 approximately. So you can see a world where we get all the way up there, bump our head against that, and then that starts the next leg lower to make even lower lows. So that's an important level to watch. You can ride this to there, and if we break through that, then great. If we don't, great. You've taken profits. You're good. And so if we look at GDX, let's see what clues that gives us. Because gold, again, not looking awesome. So GDX is actually on day 1, 2, 3, 4. Friday will be day 5, right? So it's a little bit behind the other ones, actually. And let's see what the percentage gain has been on this one. So about 6.6%. So not too far behind silver, just about closing above the 10-period moving average. So it does look like we had maybe a daily cycle low on day 28, similar to silver, new lows on the weekly, and similar idea. And in this case, we never actually closed above the 10-period moving average, which again is a thing that they'll call out, the cycles analysts do in general. What I'll say about that, though, is sometimes something is so bearish that it just can't make it to the weekly cycle low. And I'll just really quickly, to the 10-period moving average. I'll just really quickly look at something like Twilio, right? So that's a good example. If you look at the the monthly chart, right? So this is your 10-period moving average. I mean, look at this thing. It's just falling off a cliff, right? And so sometimes it's just not going to make it back there. And so you have to recognize that small rally for what it is. And it's probably another leg lower, is just kind of the point. And I'll finally just kind of really quickly look at the Dixie. Oh, actually, I don't think we looked at the monthly chart for GDX. Right, so same idea. Let's just look at what the level will be. So the monthly, that's a high above 27.58. So if we complete this bullish outside monthly pattern, wow, that's a nice little bit of upside, like $3 on a $24 stock. And if we look at the Dixie really quickly, definitely setting up a potentially bearish month. Month 20, maybe this is your top for the 3-year cycle. That's what is really important here, what is worth watching. More importantly, or more immediately, I should say, it does seem like we have the start of our daily cycle low. And so this is day 21 here. And so now we watch to see if this also causes a weekly cycle decline. So we're on week 14 here. So this is definitely set up for some more downside. But ultimately, we'd have to kind of break below here.